From news and views, issues and opportunities, we'll have in-depth conversations with decision makers to find out what they know and what they think. I'm Rico Hizon, inviting you to join this election special episode of The Exchange, because your business is our business. Tens of millions of Filipinos seeking better living conditions are making their vote count on Election Day. A crucial turning point for the economy, battered by a series of crises. It's a winner-take-all for the new president in a challenging way. A national debt that has reached nearly 13 trillion pesos calls for higher minimum wage, keeping the healthcare system resilient against the pandemic while emerging from a political exercise that has polarized the nation yet again. Investors are observing on the sidelines, waiting for signs that it is safe to park their funds in the country, while micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are the backbone of the economy, seek more support to improve productivity. The numerous possibilities for small-scale businesses in our C-suite vision. In a few weeks, 1 of 10 candidates will be sworn in as the 17th president of the Philippines. The new leader will face a daunting task of managing a mountain of debt while addressing the declining quality of life of Filipinos worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. To discuss the crucial economic recovery in the first 100 days of the new president and the next 6 years is ING Bank Manila's Nicolas Mapa. Nick, thank you so much for joining us on The Exchange. What should be the first executive order of the new president to address the economic needs of our kababayans?
Yeah, hi Rico. Well, I can't probably pin an executive order, but I think the first order of the day would be to ensure investors and the Philippines that she is championing fiscal sustainability and fiscal prudence. I think you mentioned in your intro that the Philippines is facing or is saddled with a mountain of debt, and that's no laughing matter. That's nothing to sneeze at. We currently have a debt to GDP ratio of 60.6%. The last time that we had this level was, I think, all the way back in 2004. So this is the first time in a long time that the incoming president will be faced with this type of or a lack of fiscal space, if for anything. So definitely hindering his or her ability to hit the ground running, unlike the current administration, which came in and had a lot of fiscal space. The new president won't have that.
We're talking about this huge debt, which means every Filipino will owe international and local borrowers more than 110,000 pesos each, from parents to children. Apart from that, Nick, what do you think would be the other big economic challenges of the next president?
That is just one issue. There are several mounting headwinds that we face. First and foremost, I think, is inflation. Inflation yesterday clocked in at 4.9%, breaching the BSP's inflation target. And this is just set to heat up even further. We could see inflation as high as 5% as early as next month. On top of that, it's the era of increased interest rates, so it will be more expensive para makautang, and that's definitely going to slow down investment momentum. So all those three things, high inflation, which should slow consumption, high interest rates, which should slow investments, and a relatively tight fiscal space should limit government spending. There's a lot of challenges on top of the global economic slowdown that we're set to face in the next few months.
Lots of headaches for the new administration. Not just a headache, it will be a migraine for the new administration. In your view, what were the missed economic and business opportunities during the Duterte administration that needs to be immediately addressed by the new chief executive?
Yeah, well, there were the current administration enjoyed a lot of political support. I felt that there was some space to address some issues that are outside the as they called Imperial Manila. Development outside, as well as focus on agriculture, I think was neglected. One of the main reasons why we're seeing inflation chronically so high in the Philippines is that food inflation is usually is very high, and one of the reasons that is because our supply issues here remain rampant. Something I felt that the current administration could have addressed. There's also the issue on transport. I think there was a lot of hype or expectation that this current president would solve the traffic issues, the MRT issues. We're still seeing a bit of that now. So hopefully the new administration can address those two things, transportation, as well as focus on the agricultural sector and areas outside Metro Manila.
And of course, with you mentioning that inflation, the higher cost of living, higher transportation costs, etc., being a major problem for the next administration, comes in this issue now from our workers of higher minimum wages. Can this be absorbed by the business community when the new administration comes in?
Yeah, well, two things happen when there's a wage hike. You start to see inflation spike further. Mm-hmm. So inflation, as we know it now, will only go higher if we have a wage increase. Secondly, it's not good for businesses because they're going to have to, of course, take care of their workers and increase the wages. So it doesn't bode well in the economy, for the economy in that environment where growth is slowing and then wages are rising. Hopefully, we get to a point where the economy is moving fast enough or growing well enough that the businesses can afford to pay higher wages. So the new president has a lot of work cut out for them. And basically, the marching order is to ensure growth, but under fiscal discipline.
Work cut out for the new government and, of course, a tight balancing act, right? On the other hand, we will also have a new Congress, a new set of senators and congressmen. What new laws should they craft, especially for the business community and for job creation?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of progress, I feel, for this administration. Tax reform was implemented even throughout the pandemic. I hope they continue that and also trying to strengthen our local smaller players, because as we know, if we have all the smaller players and the medium-sized players flourishing, then that's when the entire economy starts to grow, when all of the or most of the economy starts to grow and not just a few sectors.
And there's also a clamor for a constituent assembly to tweak the constitution to attract new foreign investments into the Philippines. Is this the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, I think this administration was able to pass several amendments to existing laws to help bring in foreign investment. But I think this is one way of bringing in more money to the Philippines. But once again, we have to ensure that our local businesses are protected to some extent. It's one thing to have all this legislation to attract foreigners, but I think they'll only start to come if the economy is running at a 6% pace. Right now, we're not quite there yet. But hopefully, the new president can steer the economy despite all the headwinds that we're facing, so that the legislation that's been passed can finally attract foreign investors.
So there's really no need to tweak the constitution, Nick. There's no need for a constituent assembly. There's no need for a constituent assembly and to tweak the constitution.
Well, I think there's enough amendments done in the past with this current administration that can bring in foreign investors. We just have to get our act together in terms of growth once again.
Thank you so much for this economic exchange, ING Bank Manila's Nicholas Mapa. And we would like to invite you to join our discussion tonight. Here's our question for you. What are the changes that you want to see in the next administration? Send in your questions to our social media accounts and I will read them later in the program. And straight ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business, we talk business and the outlook. Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, or FINEX, and the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines join us straight ahead. And micro, small, and medium enterprises, a buzzword for most candidates during the campaign. We hear from two MSMEs on their hopes and expectations from the country's next leaders. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Businesses, both local and foreign, are waiting on who will be the 17th President of the Republic. We look at the business climate under President Duterte and what's expected of the next administration. Let's now have an exchange with Francis Lim from the Financial Executives Institute, or FINEX, and John Forbes of the American Chamber of Commerce. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Francis, let me start off with you. What were the hits and misses of this Duterte administration for the local business sector?
Okay, I think the surest hit was the passage of key business-friendly legislations such as the CREATE Law, the amendments to the Public Service Act, the Rice Tariffication Act, the amendments to the Foreign Investment Act, and the amendments to the Retail Trade Act. So these are sure hits by the administration of President Duterte. On the misses, I think we still see corruption despite his public pronouncements during his campaign, that he would address corruption. Of course, we all know that the drug problem is still here, despite the many deaths that arose from his war on drugs. And to a certain extent, foreign policy, like the West Philippine Sea. So personally, those are the misses that come to mind.
John, did you see an improvement in the relationship between the Duterte government and the foreign business sector?
Well, we saw the results in increased FDI. Under the Duterte administration over 5 years, the annual FDI was $9 billion, which is higher than any previous president and actually higher than the levels that Malaysia and Thailand each are getting. So there's one test of it. Another one, of course, is in what's called the spending on infrastructure under the so-called build, which started under Aquino, but it continued. And then I agree with what Francis has said, but I'd add the ease of doing business and the creation of ARTA to try to reduce some red tape. We have an E-Vehicles Act, and we're hoping that the Creative Industries Act will also be approved when the Congress comes back into session. We had a RP, Korean Free Trade Agreement. It is yet to be ratified. RCEP, we hope, will be ratified when the Senate comes back again. So it's quite a lot.
And you mentioned about the ease of doing business. Why didn't we see much of an improvement or a fast tracking of, all these documents that have to be passed through the government bureaucracy over the past 6 years?
Well, you'll see more if you get better broadband. We still suffer from slow and inadequate and overpriced broadband.
And Francis, how can we improve the country's competitiveness under the new administration?
I think the new administration will really have to focus on infrastructure, because it's no secret that vis-a-vis our neighbors and even much more in the world, our infrastructure needs a lot of improvement. And in that regard, I think because of the experience from the COVID-19, digital infrastructure must be given special attention. Of course, rule of law is very important. No matter who the president will be, I think adherence to the rule of law is very important because that's what business really looks for, that in case they have problems, their problems are attended, the courts are strong, the government is fair, and so on and so forth, that there are no unilateral cancellation of contracts, there's no public condemnation of businessmen, even before the contract is annulled, and so on and so forth. And I think rule of law will really it's a very fundamental thing to happen in the next administration.
John, how concerned are foreign business investors on the outcome of the elections? There are some rumors and talk that some are thinking of leaving the country should certain candidates win.
I don't think they know what the candidates are going to do. We don't know who the winner is going to be. We don't know who the cabinet is going to be. If you recall, there were uncertainties about President Duterte, and then within 2 weeks of the election results being cleared, the prospective finance secretary gave a major speech in which they outlined the chief economic principles of the new administration.
Yes.
And Francis,
that was reassuring.
Mhm.
We have to know who the cabinet secretaries are. We're looking for continuity of policy. We've had extreme continuity of policy in 2 successive administrations. So that's very, very important to continue.
So investors are currently on a wait-and-see mode yet again until the results are in. And for Francis, for local businesses, what concerns them the most about this election?
Of course, we're hoping for an honest, orderly, and peaceful election, and that no matter whoever wins, there will be a peaceful transfer of power. Because if there's no peaceful transfer of power, that means instability and uncertainty, which is really very bad for business. And we really hope that the new president will really continue the policies that have been put in place. And we have mentioned some, the business-friendly, investor-friendly laws. I don't think the next president would want to really not implement those laws. And we really hope that whoever wins, of course, we have our own political leanings. Whoever wins, we should consider it as the expression of sovereign will. It's the voice of God, vox populi, vox Dei, so to speak. So let's move on, whoever wins, and let's support whoever the president that will be elected.
And John, what is on the wish list of the American Chamber of Commerce to attract new U.S. investment into the country for the new government?
Well, Francis mentioned the RTA, retail trade, and FIA. So, I mean, the word is just spreading out about that, and we're starting to get some investors such as Elon Musk, SpaceLink, and his Starlink satellite project. We expect others of those in telecommunications and transportation. So we have to push that out. I think that's going to push that figure of 9 to 10 billion a year up maybe by 50%. But it depends upon all the things Francis is just saying. We need to have that continuity. We have to have strong cabinet and the like. The growth rate should be back at 6 to 7, even higher. We got to continue that infrastructure. There's so much more to be done on modernizing infrastructure, improving logistics, stopping corruption, and continuing to reduce red tape. It's a big wish list, but the potential of the country is enormous.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for this exchange. Francis Lim from Phoenix and John Forbes from AmCham. And we've been receiving comments about our discussion tonight on our social media accounts. And our question is, what are the changes that you would want to see in the forthcoming administration? I will be reading some of our viewers' comments next. More coming up on The Exchange, where your business is our business. What are small enterprises looking from the new government? We talk to Med Hive and Chocolate de San Isidro right here on CNN Philippines. News you can use, news you can trust. Welcome back to The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. On to our discussion on social media, we ask you the question, what are the changes that you would want to see in the upcoming administration? Kevin Coobligado says the incoming leaders should have a concrete post-pandemic plan and create efficient programs for agriculture, housing, and job creation. Kat Reyes says we need a healthcare system that's free, accessible, and fair to all. She also underscored the need for more specialty hospitals across the country. For Kevin Patrick Yu, we should build facilities that could produce sufficient, efficient, and cheaper energy to improve production while bringing down the costs of goods and services. And Virgilio Bismote wants the next administration to increase the minimum wage of all workers across the board to boost purchasing power. Thank you so much to all our exchange viewers for their comments and views. Continue joining the discussion on our social media pages. 2020 data shows more than 99% of businesses in the country are MSMEs. A number of presidential bets have promised support for them, from cash grants to loans. How important is it for these candidates to follow through? Let's now have an exchange with Med Hive's Nigel Lirio and Chocolate de San Isidro's Dante Muico Jr. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Nigel, let's start off with you. You are in the business of selling medicine and equipment online. What have been the results so far?
So during the pandemic, a lot of hospitals had to shift the ways they procure their medical supplies as well as their medical devices. So the pandemic actually introduced this new concept of purchasing online for medical supplies, and that's where we came in.
And Nigel, did you find the process of jump-starting a business difficult? What can you say about the country's policies and processes on business formation and registration?
It can be very complex, especially if you're building something that doesn't really have a template. We know a lot of startups that have built very unique business models that they would have to explain very thoroughly to the SEC, and they would need to ask a lot of professional help to get this done.
And Dante, Chocolate de San Isidro is a social enterprise based in Davao, and you pride yourself to be one of the suppliers of Philippine cacao to the world. Are you getting enough support from the government, both local and national?
Yeah, actually, one thing good about the moves of the government right now is that they're directing towards giving more access to the markets. So last year we participated in the Digital IFEX, where that's the International Food Expo, where we were able to book some clients international outside of the Philippines.
And how did this pandemic, Dante, impact your business? And have you been able to recover?
You know, it's been so hard, especially for the agriculture and the food sector. And what we did was we have to re-engineer the products that we have, do some more value adding to the raw materials, and I think that's the way to go for agriculture based companies.
And Nigel, you mentioned that it was quite challenging to jumpstart your startup business. What should the government do to further improve the ease of doing business and to help groups like yourself, the small and the micro and the small enterprises?
Yep. I think the first step would definitely be to recognize the differences between a startup and I guess other traditional businesses. We startups have very unique business models. We have different priorities. We usually favor hyper fast growth over short-term profit. And definitely if the policies that they set in place could align more to how a startup would operate, that would definitely help us.
And how are you trying to pivot now your Med Hive business with the economy already opening up across the archipelago?
So the thing that we discovered was that this problem did not exist just because of the pandemic. What the pandemic did was it exposed the weaknesses of the current processes in hospital and medical procurement. And we've discovered that these hospitals, despite things opening up, still prefer to use online systems, digital systems. And I think this applies to a lot of other industries. They've seen how convenient it can be, how more efficient it can be when you digitize your processes.
And do you think that this digitization of in our economy will continue even we've opened up the economy?
Absolutely. I think the value is there. You could recognize it with the bigger names like Grab, Food Panda. These guys are still growing even with the economy jump starting again.
And Dante, micro, small, and medium enterprises are the backbone of the economy. More than 99.5% of businesses are MSMEs, and presidential aspirants have pledged to increase support for your type of companies. How should these promises be materialized?
You know, our company, Chocolate de San Isidro, started as a micro company, and it is rural based, and we started working with the farmers. The first thing that the government did back around 10 years ago is that they were able to give us the support through the One Town One Product program. And I think that in this type of program, there has much to be done in improving our products, especially in terms of the scale and also the quality, and supporting SMEs, especially those in the food sector, to obtain the standards and certifications that are being required by the international markets.
How are you trying to pivot now, Dante? The Chocolate de San Isidro business as the economy continues to open up and things are normalizing in terms of operations?
We are actually still bullish, even after all the things that happened during the pandemic, considering that the market for agricultural products abroad is still increasing, and the domestic market is actually very, very bullish right now. And that's what I think would be, I think that's good for the Philippine economy, because our local market is slowly appreciating the local products right now, and they are opting for a more sustainable and locally sourced products.
And Nigel, what is your hope from the next administration, and what should be their priorities in helping the micro, small, and medium businesses?
Yeah, definitely for me, I think they need to recognize the importance of startups and small businesses, not just in an economic point of view, but startups are here to change the way we do things. We try to improve the processes. We try to improve the way we do things, and I hope that the next administration empowers the next generation of entrepreneurs, because I know for a fact I've met a lot of creative entrepreneurs that want to start up their ideas. They're very creative, very innovative, but they're very intimidated with I guess the road to that. Like, just getting things started is very intimidating, and I hope that the next administration could address that.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this MSME exchange. Med Hive's Nigel Lirio and Chocolate de San Isidro's Dante Muyco Jr. And this is the election special episode of The Exchange, where we make sense of the facts and the figures and the ups and downs of the business cycle, because your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can use. News you can trust.